So he is now wondering why they're worried about or scared of, or someone who that God's not fighting for when we know that he's on our side. Who is this guy that he should defy the armies of the living God? Then we jump to the 33rd verse. And Saul said to David, "You're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." This opportunity didn't necessarily fall David's way because he was a really good shot with the slingshot. You think he's a good guy, but in the next passage that we read, he wants to know what's in this for me. How am I going to get paid if I'm going to go against this giant? What's in it for me? Yeah. And so he asks the question, and they give him the answer. When he asks, who is it that would dare come against the people of God? This man who has no covenant with God. And you are afraid of him. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get something for it. And so the king offers him no taxes. If you were from California, that would be a big deal.
Sure.
Then in Texas, we still have to deal with taxes.
Right.
And then he was offered the king's daughter. I don't know if he looked back at the giant, looked at the daughter, or how his scenario played out, but she must have been attractive. It's like, okay. Then Saul tries to put his armor on him. Imagine this being a 12-year-old. Should have brought a 12-year-old or a picture of one. I have some grandkids about that age. And imagining Saul being a good-sized man himself, David trying to wear this, but it was not something he was familiar with. So he says, take it off. The 33rd verse here through the 37th verse is where I want to focus for the next few minutes. But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came out and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it, and I struck it, and I delivered the lamb from its mouth, and when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard, and I struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God." Moreover, David said, "The Lord," notice David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." At this point, David has done nothing but run his mouth. And Saul said to David, "Go and the Lord be with you." As I go back over and read this same story we read a long time, I realize these things that David is speaking, a lot of times we have to speak to ourselves. If you haven't tried that, maybe you should. Because I catch myself talking to myself quite often. And sometimes we have to encourage ourselves. Amen. Sometimes we have to. My dad had a saying that, "Boy, you need to talk to yourself." Amen. Because I'm not changing my mind. So you need to go decide that you're going to do it my way. That you're going to see things my way. Because that's the way it's going to be eventually. So you need to talk to yourself. And so I see David in this scenario constantly talking to himself and reminding himself, well, you know what? I killed a bear. I killed a lion. Took him by the mane. Struck him and killed him. He just remind you that's a bad 12-year-old. I wouldn't touch that, either one of those. And he reminded himself, God has helped me through so many scenarios in my life. And so this was this impossible giant, it seemed, for everybody else, but for some reason David relied on his past victories and the things that he had had success in when he was challenged with the greatest giant of his life. And he remembered that today this fight will be with one who has not got a covenant with God. And some of us need to remember, no matter the situation, that no weapon formed against us will be able to prosper.
Amen.
That's because the God of creation is the God who is on our side. The same God that delivered David from the lion and the bear, he was speaking to this giant today. Verse 16. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself for 40 days, morning and evening. First thing in the morning, last thing in the evening. Why would he do that? Because he wanted him to be thinking about him first thing when he got up in the morning and the last thing when he went to bed at night. Some of you, you're allowing your giant to speak to you when you get up in the morning, and it's the last thing you go to bed with at night. He wants to get in your head, and he wants to speak to you constantly because, you know what? He goes about like a roaring lion, and he's speaking to anyone who will listen to him. So we need to understand that when he comes in to disturb our rest and to take away our strength, there's something about morning and evening when you get up and when you lay down.
That's real.
He wants his words running through your head. Verse 43 of this same chapter. I think I just gave you 45, okay? Basically, the Philistines talking a lot of smack, and then notice David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord,
Yes.
the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied."
Right.
So he's still running his mouth. You see, when I look at this now with a different perspective, I realize